So the way to win betting sports, the best way, is identify something that nobody else has identified. Be the innovator. So I was playing around with the binomial. Warning, danger, there's a little math. No. So I just punched in 17 games, average team, 500 team. If you flip a coin 17 times, all right? If you played under 7.5 on a team lined on 8.5, bottom line is your break even by this binomial distribution would be minus 217 / plus 217. You need plus 217 to break even, but here's the mistake.
The only back-to-back winner of the Hilton Super Contest. He joins us now. How you doing, man?
Quite a contrast. 1 year ago, we were sweating out Survivor the last week with Greg Jones, and my goodness, you know, it sounds so exciting, and it is, but how stressful was that last week?
Last year, you mean?
Yeah, of last year.
Well, you and I, because we were talking about it all the time. Meet me at the Caesars gym. I have to talk to you about Survivor.
Yes.
And so Steve's one of these guys where if you're on treadmills at the same time, he wants to talk to you the whole time. You're like, I can't talk right now, Steve. I can't talk about this. But it was, are you happy? Do you feel unburdened by not being involved in it this year?
Well, it's a mixed blessing, right?
Yeah.
It's like I'd much rather have the burden of a big payout possibly, but it's certainly a little less stressful. I'm hanging around in there's one contest left that I might be able to win.
Oh, the season wins one.
The season wins. So the resume I'm going to submit to the Westgate right now has 23 wins with the possibility of 24 if Houston goes over 9.5. So will 24-8 win the Westgate season win contest? I'm going to predict it will. Because think about that. That's like going 3-1 in every division. That's going to be tough to beat.
Did you say Wes Reynolds was in this?
Wes Reynolds won it 2 years ago.
He won it 2 years ago.
2 years ago. And famously, that's the year there was only 30 teams because of the Hamlin year. So Buffalo and Cincy got disqualified. They didn't count.
That's right.
And so Wes, he punched in 21 out of 30 points.
Wow.
So that's why I'm thinking 23 gives me a good chance. I got a good tie break, too. I got Kansas City with 13 wins.
Which brings to mind one of the things that we've talked about here on A Numbers Game for years now. We give Drew Dinsick the credit for this. He deserves the credit, which is the pre-flop alternate season win totals markets before the season starts. And Drew's line, which resonated and we've repeated many times, was the notion, and I'll paraphrase, the notion that those are priced correctly is totally false, right? It's probably a complete fallacy that those are priced correctly. And you believe, we teased because we talked about your how you hyped up the show, how you're going to talk about how you exploit one thing and you made $1 million betting. But that's one of those things that would apply, right?
Yeah, and the whale capper nailed it here. So the way to win betting sports, the best way, is identify something that nobody else has identified. Be the innovator. And I think Drew was. You know, he was the first guy publicly that talked about it. So I was playing around with the binomial. Warning, danger, there's a little math.
No. Here comes the math, people.
Here it comes. So I just punched in 17 games, average team, 500 team. If you flip a coin 17 times, all right? How many heads or tails should you get? So it's like a season win number, right? How often you're going to win exactly 8 or 9 games. And it turns out it's 18.7%, okay? So I'm taking a few shortcuts. So if you played under 7.5 on a team lined on 8.5, bottom line is your break even by this binomial distribution would be minus 217 / plus 217. You need plus 217 to break even, but here's the mistake. And you can get plus 217 oftentimes. Mm-hmm. The mistake is this is a fair coin that's correctly valued, 50% heads, 50% tails, and the coin doesn't change. So there's two mistakes, inherent flaws to this. One is you could get a team that's a lot better or a lot worse than what the fair coin was thought to be. By example, this year, like the Vikings were a 7-win team. Well, they weren't going to land anywhere close to 7 because the Vikings were like a 10-win coin at least that was priced as a 7. That's factor 1, mispricing to start the season. Factor 2, changes during the season. New Orleans Saints. Yeah, they probably were lined right to win, 7.5 games, but then boom, Olave gets hurt, Carr gets smashed around, and so they're a shell of themselves by the end of the year. So because of that, and then let's go to Matt Buckhalter, there's an inherent bias, and I knew about this also, towards people want to bet overs.
In every sport,
In every sport. But so in football, it turns out if you just bet unders on all these season wins, and Matt has talked about this, you're pretty much going to break even right off the bat. So you want to play these alternative totals, and you want to go under. What's interesting is I think Matt recommended one over alternative, and it lost. And I was thinking it's like, well, he went against his general guideline, and so he lost on general principles.
A lot of us don't follow our own advice.
I don't well.
The way I used to do it in my baseball manifestos, the way I used to say it is, if your instinct is to bet a spade of overs, you're probably doing this wrong, right? That's because we are wired for optimism. We're wired for overs in individual games and totals, right? We're wired for teams to go over their season win totals. And that instinct is not a good one for bettors.
But it was good in football this year because in the NFL, the favorites and the overs, if you just bet them all year long, you got murdered in September, now you're up big. They both are over 53% for the year. And if you spit that into a binomial calculator within like 99% confidence interval, something like that, it's like this is not random. The numbers were too low and wrong.
And let's give a shout out, because the reason that you have become sort of recently here fixated on this notion of, find one thing you're good at, find one thing that no one else is doing, find one thing you can exploit, and you can really, really be successful at this, is the segment that I did here with Gina Fiore, who came on here, and she was great. She was outstanding.
She was.
And you got super inspired by that.
Yeah, because to summarize, if you missed the segment, so Gina was a hole carder, and like she said, and I agreed with her number, about 1 in 300 dealers will flash their hole card. Mm-hmm. Helps to be short, helps to be in a wheelchair. Oh, my leg.
But the amount of time she spent scouting just to find those people.
Exactly. And then you find someone, and it's like what you want to do is you want to have a team because it's too obvious if you're peaking and then you're betting big.
That's right.
So you have your peakers just betting $5.
That would not be a good way to do it. Be like, hey, are you showing a card there?
Yes.
Yeah, that would not be good.
And so you have your Confederate that is betting, flat. They can flat bet. They can just bet 500 a hand, and every time they get 16 against a 9, I think I'll stay. And the dealer flips over a 6. And when you think about it, it's so obvious. Like any casino manager with the brain that is aware of this possibility play, and this is well documented in the movie Casino, right, where they break the guy's hand. It's like it takes the movie star like 10 seconds to figure out, well, something's amiss here. This guy keeps guessing right, and yet casino employees, remember, they see thousands of losing gamblers over and over and over again, and the natural reaction is like, it's a casino. Someone has to win money, every now and then.
And now I'm gonna reference a tweet we just got moments ago, which is Steve going to tell the parlay card story again? Your vehicle to sort of exploiting, that was your thing back in the day.
Yeah. So Epiphany. So 1992. Forget South Point. Okay, that's like the tail end of all this. Okay, so I'm gonna go back. We're going back in time. In 1992, came to Vegas. I playing some blackjack, screwing around. I don't have much of a bankroll, and I'm working a full-time job, and I'm studying to be a full-time actuary, taking all these exams. Very strenuous. So I don't have time to get to Vegas. But I look at this card, and I'm like, what's this? All the point spreads are published, printed on Wednesday. They're stale. They don't move.
What's this? Yes.
What's this? And I'm like, oh, well, the payouts are going to be lousy. I flip it over, and it's like, oh, well, parlays are sucker bets, right? Well, the 3-teamer paid 7 for 1. That's the same as 6 to 1. Those are true odds. It's like minus 110. The 6-teamer then, so if the 3-teamer pays 7 for 1, the 6-teamer should pay 49 for 1. It paid 54.
The 6 to 1 was the one that was exploitable. We've talked about this on the show before. That was the one where smart guys like you figured out. And that's the amazing thing. If you're smart like Steve, you will sniff out the value somewhere.
And actually, the 10-teamer was the best of them all. But you got taxed on the 9 and 10-teamer. I didn't want them to know who I was. I wanted to be anonymous. So I played 6, 7, and 8-teamers. And we'll talk about that in the next segment.
We'll continue that story. And then Steve's Week 18 plays in the National Football League. That's on the other side. Numbers Game, VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. Pat Moran on Twitter. This is insane. Talking about our Comeback Player of the Year conversation. Based on this, Joe Burrow won't get shut out for an award. They'll give him Rookie of the Year. He's very angry about it. SN Wright. Get Fez. Oh, I noticed this too, Fez. He said, get Fez to say New Orleans correctly. I believe he corrects people on Nevada. Just saying. It's New Orleans. It's not New Orleans.
Caramel? Caramel?
Terry Ray. As Charlie Munger said, you're looking for a mispriced gamble. That's what investing is, and you have to know enough to know whether the gamble is mispriced. That's value investing. Well
If you watch The Big Short, this is going back to the parlay cards.
Great book, great movie.
This is an example where they're shorting all the banks and all these AAA and AA bonds that have never failed, right? And everyone's making fun of them. So, like, going back to the story about the parlay cards, so it's like 1993. And this is the first score, and everyone who's a professional gambler, they lose. You've got to put in your dues, and you get better at it. We didn't lose from the get-go. We just kicked butt. I still remember my buddy John, my Northwestern pal. He came out and he played like all these 6-teamers at the Riviera, and he didn't even bet that much. And he went like 13-1 on the 14 teams he used. Yeah. So literally more than half of his cards paid 54 for one. And I did, really well. And I think I won like 30,000. I still remember when they were cashing ticket after ticket. We were nervous about it. We read, the beat up card counters and stuff that do really well. And we're just cashing these tickets slowly matriculating, the profits. And they're just laughing. They're like, anytime you guys want to come back, it feels like we were just some random kid suckers that had just lucky. And shout out Joe Lupo, 1996.
Joe Lupo
ran the Stardust. He's documented in the book by Chad Millman, The Odds, and with Alan Boston. And he was the first guy to recognize, whoa, wait a minute, maybe this isn't just random luck as I'm playing again and again and winning. And he was the first guy to back me up, and then ultimately he barred me for a year. He says, Steve, no more bets for you. And he thought about it for the rest of the year, and so I started
for the rest of the year.
So I started plying my trade and going around, and every now and then you'd find a place that just hadn't gotten the memo.
You got into scouting mode, yeah.
Go in the scouting mode, and famous like blew up Prim once, blew up the Wild West on Tropicana, Wendover, Nevada.
Yeah.
I still don't feel safe going back to Wendover, Nevada.
Really?
Wendover, literally, Baldini's up in Reno. Single-handedly, Baldini's became a Leroy's book 2 weeks after I got them in back-to-back weeks.
You don't feel comfortable because you think they'll remember you, kind of thing?
Wendover is a scary little border town in Utah. It holds its own secrets.
I will say this, though. So we did this. And when I say we, I said you and me did this last year at the William Hill Caesars books. We actually won big one week. But by mid-season, it was kind of over because every time you would walk up there, and you and I just talked about this off air, every time you would walk up there, they'd be like, oh, those 3 games are not on. They're not on the
So
card
here's
anymore.
the lesson.
Yeah.
The reason I'm talking about it, it's largely dead.
It's dead.
It's basically dead, and William Hill was the last place that was still taking some action, in the best way I can. Famously with the South Point, we talked about the story. So I had a $200 10-team card at South Point, okay? Bert Osborne, who was running the book, shook my hand. He's like, that's fantastic, Steve. Went ahead and paid me the $130,000 in chips and some cash. Helped me out with security, walking me out, and then he did say, not in a negative way. And then he said, Steve, I'm going to need you never to win more than $50,000 in any one weekend ever again. You understand? Kind of like old school Vegas. And then, but by contrast, 10 years later, Chrissy's run the book, and I play with my player's card. I play 10 $90 parlay cards. Well, he's always sneaking in these cards.
Well, let's be fair, because you were being a pig about it, right? And that's what he would say about it.
I use my players. How can I be a pig if I'm using my player's card, disclosing who I am? Here's 10 cards during March Madness. To be fair, Chrissy he'd recognized I had the advantage, and he just snapped and he said, "No more of that."
Well,
which is okay. That's his prerogative.
I don't want to get into it, but yeah, okay. There's a difference of opinion there. Let's put it that way on how that went down.
Yes.
Fair? Okay.
Yes.
Fair.
Absolutely. There's always two sides.
There's always two sides.
And it's a good point that, everything's kumbaya and all these content providers are huggy with all the sportsbook directors. And I got to say, I'm in good with Circa and I love everyone at Circa, but that is not the norm in town. The norm, I would say, I have a really good relationship with the Win, but there's a lot of books that barely tolerate me. You're I guess we got to let Fez play, but part of that is my past. When you're coming in and you're cashing, at the Aladdin, one time I cashed $9,000 parlay cards. They literally had security running after me.
Okay, but you would agree. Hold on, I got to get you to make a concession here. You would agree that you are physically incapable, Steve Fezzik, we get along fine, but you would agree that you are physically incapable of sort of restraining yourself if you sniff any edge anywhere. And if they say to you, hey, Steve Fezzik, that's great that you did that, but maybe ratchet it back a little bit, that you are incapable. The fiber, your DNA, you cannot stop yourself.
Well, you're correct. But I'm not going to say it's necessarily a flaw. And let me say this.
I'm not saying it's a flaw. I'm just saying that's where you run into trouble.
If you're a sucker, and I'll go back to Cal Neva up in Reno, okay? In the 1990s, I don't know what was going on. 2 a.m, people were coming up with green garbage cans full of parlay cards, they like in shoe boxes, and they'd be at the window for an hour and a half. What the heck this was, I don't know. But people would be like putting in bets for an hour and a half, tens of thousands of dollars of cards. None of those guys ever got backed off. None of those guys, there's no questions asked. That money just went through the window.
Well, I mean, it must be your warm and fuzzy personality that people see on Twitter all the time. That must be it.
That was before Twitter.
Well, as I'm saying.
That was before Twitter.
I'm just saying, I'd love to give you the benefit of the doubt, but, the evidence suggests.
Fair enough. But this happens with Gina, too. I'm sure she got, harassed big time when, like it's like Renegade, it's like I'm in trouble. The coop is up, right?
Right.
It's like.
But who wouldn't? Yeah, but you, sir, are not Gina. In other words, like in terms of the personality you exude. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, fair enough.
Okay,
fair enough. But the lesson is find something like the Whale Capper has found with these alternative totals.
Absolutely.
And a book, I've referenced this before, Logan Field's 2020 Sports Betting, Think Like a Pro, documents how he beat golf, and he explains specific examples, including betting the field. Now, this wouldn't work in tennis betting because the field never wins, because the better tennis player always wins, but that's not true in golf. Total scrubs can win golf tournaments.
Yep.
And you get 40 total scrubs in the field, and they can beat, they can't, Morikawa and all these guys.
Yeah, in tennis, they can't win the slams necessarily, but they can win some of the 500
sure.
$250s. Real quick before you go, what do you got week 18?
So we're going to go first halves, 2 of them. We're going to play the Bays in the first half. We're going to play Green Bay -6.5, -120, and Tampa Bay -7.5, -115. The reason I like both games, Green Bay possibly playing for seeding. They hate the Bears. Worried a little bit on the tail end. Green Bay tends to take the ball. Ultra motivated first half. Same with Tampa Bay. I think Tampa Bay obviously ultra motivated to win the division. They might take their feet off the gas, make sure Mike Evans gets his 85 pass yards. But Tampa should start with the ball first. Not a lock, but they should start with the ball, which is an edge. And I also like both teams, and both teams have done very well in the first half. So Green Bay first half, Tampa Bay first half.
Easy enough to remember. And the Mike Evans thing is he needs 85 yards to continue his streak of 1,000-yard receiving season. And Baker Mayfield and the Bucs are well aware of
bold
that.
Prediction, Mike Evans will get exactly 91 yards this week, because as soon as he gets over 85, they got a playoff game to play the next week.
Oh, man, if he gets 91. Thank you, Steve. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Gilly.
Thanks for watching, but don't let the betting insights end here. If you want an extra edge this football season, you can get a month of VSiN Pro right now absolutely free. That means access to our betting insights, analysis, and tools like our betting splits at 0 cost to you. Click the link in the description to sign up.